Hey, this video is for the builders, developers, marketers, whoever's building software and automations that are useful but need SMS. And they've just hit A2P and they're like, what the hell is this A2P thing? What is this? How do I go about it? This video is for you. We're going to go through a whole bunch of different scenarios, a whole bunch of options, and I'm going to walk you through it as I walked many other people through this path. This wretched path. This video is not for spammers. Honestly, the spammers. You guys freaking ruined this for us. I remember when I was a little boy, no, I was literally 30, a few years ago. You could just sign up to Twilio and you could send text and it worked. And then you know what happened? Spammers and scammers stealing people's retirement money. This video is not for you. This video is for you builders, developers, startups, founders, the people who are useful to society. I'm going to do my best to help you navigate A2P. Before we jump into this, let me tell you about myself. I'm the founder of Pinggram.io. We offer a variety of messaging APIs, including SMS. And as part of our service, at no extra charge, we do our clients' A2P 10DLC for them. So if you don't want to watch the rest of this video, go to Pinggram.io, sign up, and start sending SMS. Our team will get in touch with you. They'll handle your A2P for you. Crazy, crazy. Now, if you're not sold, we also offer a A2P Helpline. You can go here, start a chat, book a free consultation, read the resources and so on, and learn how to do it yourself without watching this video. Now, if you really insist on doing this yourself, getting yourself in a whole bunch of trouble, don't worry, I'll walk you through it. I'm going to take you through all of it step by step. The first question many people have, what the hell is A2P? Listen, spammers came on and US was like, hey, we got to stop these spammers from spamming people with their texts. And they thought that we should put some regulations in place. So you can't just randomly text people. You got to go through this regulation, get registered, and get permission to send texts. And it's called A2P 10DLC. A2P stands for application to person. Who does it apply to? If you're sending a text programmatically, A2P applies to you. And if you want this text to come from a regular looking 10-digit number, 10DLC, 10-digit long code, 10DLC applies to you. So A2P 10DLC is a regulation in place to prevent random people from messaging people programmatically from a regular looking number. And the first question that comes to mind is that, what if I send from toll-free number or a different kind of number? So can you bypass A2P 10DLC by using a different delivery? The answer is yes. However, they're not really easier than A2P. I'm going to go through them one by one and tell you why they're not great fits, or maybe they're a great fit in your case. Now, the first one that always comes up is toll-free number. The 1-800 numbers. They don't need A2P 10DLC, but they have their own registration. The registration takes days, and you could get rejected on that. And also, toll-free numbers are shown to have less deliverability than 10DLC numbers because the carriers and your devices know that these numbers are easier to get, so spammers use them more. So then the carriers are more sensitive on the content that's delivered through them. So they get filtered more. So, okay, you got this number that gets filtered more. It also has a registration. You could get rejected on the registration. What's the point? Just do your A2P 10DLC right. Okay? Okay. That is toll-free. It's like, the registration is like a couple days shorter and maybe the form is a little shorter, but that's it. There's so many negatives about it. Doesn't make sense. Doesn't make any sense. Next up is short code. Short codes don't need A2P 10DLC, but they have their own registration process that literally takes months. They are super sensitive about who gets short codes, right? Because usually it's like banks and government and so on. It takes months and it is so expensive. If this is the first time you're hearing short codes, probably not for you, probably for really large organizations with a ton of money, okay? Then it's RCS. What about RCS messaging? I can bypass 10 DLC and just use RCS. Yes, again, it takes weeks to months to get that registered. It also costs money. Like T-Mobile charges you, I think, $500 just to enable your RCS on T-Mobile phones. I'm like, what the hell? So it's like, again, there's no point. Like 10 DLC, you can just do it. It's near free. At least it's free in PingRam. And it takes a couple days. You're done. So no point doing RCS, especially that it's not supported on every device or every carrier. Next up is iMessage. I see a lot of like hacky startups coming up with like, bypass 10 DLC, do iMessage. Well, it's super hacky. There's no official API to send iMessage to users. So what they do, if you look into too deep into their product, they say, fall back to SMS. So wait, it's going to fall back to SMS and then I'm going to need A2P when iMessage is not supported in some cases. Yeah. Okay. What's the point then? Just do A2P, guys. Just do A2P. Use PingRam. If you don't want to use PingRam, just register your A2P once correctly using this video. You'll be done. Okay. You don't have to worry about all these hacky ways that take weeks or months to register and are more expensive than SMS. Let's get into the A2P 10 DLC process. It looks something like this. You submit your brand, which is like, who are you? Who's the company that's sending these messages? If you do it right, it could be a day or two. If you do it wrong, it could be multiple days. And then it's the campaign. Campaign's like, why are you sending text, right? What's the purpose? And this is the hardest part. If you get it wrong, I've seen companies dealing with this 4 weeks, 6 weeks, and they give up and come to PingRam. Well, thank you, Twilio, for the business, And if you do it right, it would be a few days. At PingRam, this whole process takes usually 3 to 5 days. And then when you got your campaign approved, you go buy the numbers, which is pretty instant, assign them to the campaign, and you can start sending. A question that always comes up is like, why is Twilio so slow on this? Why don't they help their customers? Well, they're not incentivized to. They have 2 products they're trying to sell you. One is the fast track package, this made up package where your experts would tell you that, hey, this campaign, you could write it better and they submit your application maybe a little faster. You know how much they charge for that? $1,000 to $5,000 a month. You know how much PingRam gets paid to do that? $0. We do that. We do that for all of our customers. The other thing they're trying to sell you is their support plan. So then you open a ticket, you go like, hey, why is my A2P application not being processed? And they don't answer you. And they tell you you have to buy this $250 production support package to get responses on support. Enough of me ranting about Twilio. I mean, we're happy. We're happy they don't serve their customers well. We take their business instead. So how does this process work? The brand registration, let's talk about that. The brand registration is essentially about who is sending these texts, right? Like, is it your company, your software company, or maybe you're working as a consultant for a client, it should be your client, or maybe you're like a solopreneur, or like a solo developer trying to build something. Maybe it's a person. It doesn't have to be a company. It could be a solo person. All right. Now, let's talk about these 2 cases quickly. If it's a solo person, they need to do a verification and they do that with a phone number. They send a text, you verify your phone number with them, and then they know you're a real person. If you're a company, they need some kind of tax number. In the US, that's usually the EIN number, the employer number. And if you don't have it, if you're a company or you registered a business, you don't have it, you can get it very quickly online. Apparently, it's like a few hours to get online. The other thing is that you don't have to be a company in the US. You just have to be able to prove that this company exists. There's public information, registrations about this company. For example, we've done this a bunch of times for Canadian companies who have a tax ID. We get their tax ID. Sometimes they request also the corporation documents. We also provide those to get the registration faster. And then it's about the address, website, and some other general information about the business. One mistake everybody makes is you have to make sure your address matches exactly this registration, whether it's your EIN registration, incorporation, whatever. Make sure this address you're providing in the brand registration form matches. One common question we get about the brand is, if you're an agency, should this be the agency or the client? It should be the client, the company, the organization that's sending these texts. Also, what if you have two different names for your companies, like you registered it and then you rebranded, or the product is named differently? You want to go with your formal company name, your formal business name, but in your website that has a different name. You mentioned that this product belongs to this company, whether in the footer, in the contact, or in terms of service. After you got your brand verified comes the campaign verification, which is the hardest step and the step that makes everybody wait weeks for their A2P approval. The most important thing is the type. Make sure the type you're picking accurately reflects what you're doing. So for example, if you're going to do OTP, do OTP. If it's a whole bunch of different stuff, put it in mixed. There's education, there's political, there's a whole bunch of different types. Then comes the explanation of this campaign. It doesn't have to be like a whole page. A paragraph is usually enough. Explain, what is this? So for example, it's an online store and this is one-time password and we send them and people log in or something, right? So you explain the use case. Then comes the opt-in and consent and opt-out. And I'm going to explain this separately. This is very important. I'm going to explain this after. They will ask you of samples. So for example, it could be, here's your OTP number. One important thing is that these samples are not set in stone. You can register a sample and then send something else later. For example, you register OTP with OTP samples. You can, of course, change the wording of your OTP, but don't change the use case. Don't suddenly send marketing messages under your OTP application. There are hefty fines in place for that. If you are changing your use case, register a new campaign, okay? Now comes the most critical factor in whether you get A2P approved or not. I would say if like A2P 10 DLC approval has like, a scorecard and it's like 10 points, 8 points is like opt-in and consent. If the auditor, if the person reviewing this feels like you don't have the consent of your recipients, you're not getting A2P approved. And for good reason. It is illegal to just text people unless they have explicitly, and I want to stress on this term, unless they have explicitly agreed to receive text from you, the brand, about the campaign we registered. I'll give you an example. Let's say there's a form online, a digital form, and there's an input for the user to put in their number and maybe receive an update about something. You have to get an explicit permission from them, which means usually it's like an unchecked checkbox. The user checks that box that says, I agree to receive SMS for these reasons from this organization. And then there's a whole bunch of terms that follows. You may want to speak to a lawyer about these. There are examples of these terms also on the internet. It includes language like you can opt out by replying stop, or you may incur charges from your carrier for receiving this SMS and so on. So this is what explicit consent means, is that the user is not automatically getting text. They have to do an action, they have to read the terms, and then they get text from you. Without this, there's no way. Now, the explicit consent can be digital, like in the form example I gave, in the sign-up page, in their profile page when they're, putting their phone number in. It could be written. So for example, we've had cases where employers want to contact their employees. It could be written in their employment contract or their onboarding material that they sign. It could also be verbal. And you might have already heard of it. When you call a bank or something, you may consent to some stuff that you don't really pay attention to. These terms could be read, especially in AI voice use cases. An AI voice can read these terms, get the user's consent that they agree to receiving SMS about this phone call or about updates on their application and so on. So that's opt-in and consent. And you have to explain this well in the campaign. And you have to explain this with proof. It could be your sign-up page that has this, checkbox. The proof could be screenshots of your employment agreement or your employment onboarding material where you explain the terms and get the employee's consent and so on, depending on the method. Get this right, make sure you have consent, and you should be good. The next thing that can ruin a perfectly good campaign registration is insufficient terms and conditions. Now, I'm not a lawyer, and this is not any legal advice. Your terms of service should be reviewed by a proper lawyer, not me. But this is the minimum we've seen that the campaign registry, the auditors, look for in your terms of service. They look for your terms of service explaining how people are opted in, how people can opt out, and that you're not going to sell the information you collect on them to other third parties. Like you're not going to sell their contact information. So to recap, you got this brand verification that could be 1 to 3 days usually if you get it right. And then there's the campaign registration. That's the most sensitive part where people get a lot of rejection. And what happens if you get a rejection? When you submit, you're waiting for a few days for Twilio to submit it to the campaign registry, TCR. This is the organization that reviews this material. Then TCR takes their time reviewing it. They write you a rejection. Sometimes it's a very vague reason. It comes back to you. There's a few days waiting to get it fixed on your side. You submit it again, wait a few days from Twilio, wait a few days on TCR. And then if this loop repeats like 2-3 times, you're literally waiting weeks for your campaign approval to come through. Now, if you don't want to deal with all of this mess, Pingram.io messaging API, you can send SMS, and our team of experts handle the A2P for you at no cost. You can also talk to the same experts for free on our A2P helpline. I'll put the link somewhere here. We're happy to support you, happy to support builders, startups, developers, and let you ship. So good luck with your A2P process. Thank you for watching. Hope you learned a lot on this video.